The snow fell in gentle cascades outside the windows of Celestine, the kind of upscale restaurant where reservations were booked months in advance, and the soft glow of crystal chandeliers cast everything in warm amber light. Christmas Eve had always been a night of solitude for Victoria Parker, CEO of Parker Industries, a woman who had built an empire from nothing but had somehow lost herself in the process. She sat alone at table 12, her black dress elegant but understated, her fingers absently turning the stem of her untouched wineglass. The reservation had been made by her assistant, part of a well-meaning intervention orchestrated by her younger sister, who worried that Victoria was disappearing into her work, becoming a ghost of the vibrant woman she once was. The blind date had seemed like a terrible idea from the moment it was suggested, but Christmas Eve in an empty penthouse felt even worse. She glanced at her watch. 7:45. He was 15 minutes late, and part of her hoped he wouldn't show at all. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of silverware against fine china. Couples leaned across candlelit tables, sharing intimate conversations and quiet laughter. Families gathered around larger tables, children's voices mixing with the warmth of holiday traditions. Victoria felt like an observer, looking through glass at a world she had forgotten how to enter. Her phone buzzed against the linen tablecloth. A text message from an unknown number made her heart sink with familiar disappointment. She picked up the device, expecting another polite cancellation, another excuse that would send her home to spend Christmas Eve alone with quarterly reports and cold takeout. Instead, the message read something entirely different. "I'm so sorry I'm running late. My daughter had a small emergency, but we're on our way now. Please don't leave. I know this probably seems unprofessional, but I really want to meet you. Give me 10 more minutes?" Victoria stared at the screen, rereading the words. "Daughter. Emergency. We're on our way." She had been expecting to meet a fellow executive, someone from her social circle, another workaholic who understood the demands of corporate life. Her sister had been vague about the details, mentioning only that he was different and exactly what you need. The message suggested something far more complicated than she had prepared for. She typed back quickly, "Take your time. I'll be here." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in pristine white. Christmas lights twinkled from every storefront and lamppost, creating a magical backdrop that seemed to mock her isolation. Victoria had spent the last 5 Christmases working, had missed family gatherings and holiday parties, had built walls so high around her heart that she barely remembered what it felt like to let someone in. Her sister had tried for years to set her up, to pull her away from the office, to remind her that there was more to life than profit margins and board meetings. But Victoria had resisted every attempt, convinced that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, a distraction that would weaken her resolve and compromise her success. Now sitting in this restaurant on Christmas Eve, waiting for a stranger who was bringing his daughter to what was supposed to be an intimate dinner, she wondered if her sister had finally found a way to break through her defenses. The front door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air and the sound of sleigh bells from a nearby street musician. Victoria looked up, expecting to see a man in an expensive suit, someone who would fit seamlessly into her world of power lunches and corporate galas. Instead, she saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. A man stood in the doorway, tall and lean with dark hair dusted with snowflakes. He wore a simple navy coat that had seen better days, and his shoes, while polished, bore the subtle signs of age and careful maintenance. But it wasn't his appearance that stopped her heart. It was the little girl beside him, no more than 6 years old, with curly brown hair, peeking out from under a knitted pink hat. She clutched a small, wrapped present in her mittened hands and looked around the restaurant with wide, wondering eyes. The man spoke quietly to the hostess, his voice carrying the gentle authority of someone accustomed to being patient, to explaining, to making things work, despite complications. The hostess nodded and began leading them toward Victoria's table, weaving between other diners who turned to smile at the child's obvious excitement. As they approached, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Not the calculating assessment she usually applied to new business contacts, not the defensive walls she erected around personal interactions, but something softer, more vulnerable. Curiosity mixed with nervousness, hope tempered by uncertainty. The man reached her table and paused, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of apology and genuine warmth. "Victoria? I'm Marcus Sullivan. And this is my daughter, Emma." His voice was deep, but gentle, with the kind of sincerity that couldn't be manufactured or practiced. "I'm so sorry about the late arrival, and for bringing Emma along. My babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't find anyone else on Christmas Eve. I know this isn't what you were expecting." Emma stepped forward, suddenly shy but determined. "Daddy said you're very important and very smart. I brought you a present because it's Christmas Eve and nobody should be alone on Christmas." She held out the small wrapped package with both hands, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her eyes bright with the innocent generosity that only children possess. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest, a fissure in the armor she had spent years constructing. She accepted the gift with hands that trembled slightly, not from cold, but from an emotion she couldn't quite name. "Thank you." "Emma, that's very thoughtful of you." Marcus helped his daughter out of her coat, revealing a red velvet dress that was clearly special occasion attire, probably Emma's best dress carefully chosen for this important evening. The contrast between the child's formal outfit and Marcus's more modest appearance told a story Victoria was beginning to understand. This wasn't a setup between social equals. This was something else entirely. As they settled into their seats, Emma between her father and Victoria, the dynamic shifted from what should have been an awkward adult encounter to something warmer, more natural. Emma chattered easily about the snow, about Christmas, about the beautiful restaurant with its sparkling lights and fancy plates. Her presence dissolved the tension that might have existed between two strangers, feeling their way through a blind date, replacing it with the kind of easy interaction that happens when a child becomes the bridge between adult uncertainties. Marcus ordered carefully, choosing items from the less expensive side of the menu with the practiced discretion of someone who understood the value of money. When Emma expressed delight at the breadbasket, commenting that the butter came in special shapes, Victoria saw Marcus's gentle smile, the way he encouraged his daughter's wonder while quietly monitoring every detail of their evening. "Emma loves trying new foods," Marcus explained, his voice carrying the pride of a devoted father. "We don't get to eat out very often, so this is a real adventure for her." Victoria watched as he helped Emma navigate the oversized menu, patiently explaining different dishes and helping her choose something she would enjoy. There was no embarrassment in his manner, no apology for their circumstances, just the quiet dignity of a man who loved his daughter and was doing his best to give her special experiences despite obvious financial constraints. When the waiter approached to take their order, Emma looked up with sparkling eyes. "Can I have the chicken with the fancy sauce? Daddy, can I? It sounds like a princess dinner." Marcus nodded, ordering the dish Emma had chosen, along with a simple pasta for himself. Victoria realized that this dinner probably represented a significant expense for them, a special splurge that Marcus had planned carefully to make their evening memorable. The understanding hit her like a physical weight. The recognition that this man had brought his daughter to meet her, not out of carelessness or lack of options, but because he wanted to share this important moment with the most precious person in his life. As they waited for their food, Emma opened her small purse and pulled out a worn coloring book and a set of crayons. "Daddy, can I color while we wait?" She began working on a picture of Santa Claus, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. Her presence transformed the elegant restaurant into something more intimate, more real. Other diners smiled as they passed their table, charmed by the sight of the little girl carefully staying within the lines of her coloring book. Victoria found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years, drawn into Emma's innocent chatter about school, about her friends, about the Christmas pageant where she had played an angel. Marcus watched his daughter with the kind of attention that spoke of a deep, abiding love. When Emma dropped a crayon and it rolled under a nearby table, he quickly retrieved it. When she struggled to open a packet of crackers, he helped without being asked. Every gesture spoke of a father who was completely devoted to his child's happiness and comfort. "Daddy works really hard," Emma announced suddenly, looking up from her coloring. "He has 3 jobs, so we can have our apartment, and so I can go to dance class. He's the best daddy in the whole world." Victoria saw Marcus's cheeks redden slightly, but he didn't shush his daughter or try to redirect the conversation. There was no shame in his expression, just the quiet acceptance of a man who was proud of the life he was building for his child, regardless of how modest it might appear to others. When their meals arrived, Emma's excitement was infectious. She carefully tasted each component of her dinner, describing the flavors with the enthusiasm of a young food critic. "The sauce tastes like flowers," she declared, making both adults laugh. "Good flowers, not the kind that make you sneeze. Victoria found herself genuinely engaged in conversation for the first time in months. Not the careful verbal sparring of business negotiations or the superficial pleasantries of corporate social events, but real conversation. Marcus spoke about his work as a night security guard, about the online courses he was taking to become a certified electrician, about his dreams of giving Emma a better life. There was no self-pity in his words, no resentment toward his circumstances, just a quiet determination that Victoria found both humbling and inspiring. "What do you do?" Marcus asked, and Victoria realized she had been dreading this moment. How could she explain her world of corporate acquisitions and international markets to a man who worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over his daughter's head? "I run a company," she said simply, trying to downplay the magnitude of her success. "It's not very exciting, lots of meetings and paperwork." Emma looked up from her dinner, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you wear pretty clothes to work? Like a princess?" Victoria smiled, touched by the child's innocent association between success and fairy tale glamour. "Sometimes I wear nice clothes, but the most important thing about any job is helping people and making sure everyone is treated fairly." Marcus nodded appreciatively at her response, and Victoria realized he was assessing how she interacted with his daughter, measuring her character by how she spoke to the most important person in his life. The recognition that she was being evaluated, not for her wealth or status, but for her basic human decency, was both sobering and strangely liberating. As dinner continued, Victoria found herself drawn deeper into their world. Emma showed her the charm bracelet she wore, each small pendant representing a special moment or achievement. A tiny book for learning to read, a ballet slipper for her dance recital, a star for being chosen as the angel in the Christmas pageant. Marcus explained each charm with the pride of a father who celebrated every milestone in his daughter's life, no matter how small. When Emma excused herself to use the restroom, Marcus walked with her, leaving Victoria alone at the table for the first time since they had arrived. She looked around the restaurant, seeing it differently now. The expensive wine, the elaborate floral arrangements, the quietly efficient service that she usually took for granted, all seemed suddenly excessive, disconnected from the real warmth and joy she had been experiencing with Marcus and Emma. Her phone buzzed with several work-related messages, board members and executives sending last-minute requests and updates that would normally have demanded her immediate attention. For the first time in years, she turned the phone face down without reading them, unwilling to let the outside world intrude on this unexpected evening. When Marcus and Emma returned, the little girl was carrying something behind her back, her face glowing with barely contained excitement. "I got you another present," she announced, pulling out a small snow globe she had obviously purchased from the restaurant's gift shop. "Daddy helped me pick it out. When you shake it, it snows inside, just like tonight." Victoria accepted the globe with a sense of wonder she hadn't felt since her own childhood. Inside the clear dome, a tiny Christmas tree stood surrounded by miniature houses, and when she shook it, artificial snow swirled around the scene in a perfect winter storm. "It's beautiful, Emma." "Thank you." The gift was simple, inexpensive, something that would have seemed trivial in her usual world of luxury and excess. But as she held it, watching the artificial snow settle around the tiny tree, Victoria felt something she had forgotten was possible. The pure joy of receiving a gift given with genuine love, chosen not for its value, but for the happiness it might bring. Marcus looked at his watch, and his expression grew slightly concerned. "We should probably start thinking about heading home soon. Emma has been up since 6 this morning, and she'll be excited about Christmas morning." Emma's face fell slightly. "Can't we stay a little longer? I'm not tired yet." But even as she protested, Victoria could see the telltale signs of a child fighting sleep. Emma's eyes were beginning to droop, and she was leaning more heavily against her father's arm. Marcus began the careful process of preparing to leave, helping Emma back into her coat, gathering her coloring supplies, making sure nothing was forgotten. Victoria watched this domestic ritual with fascination, recognizing the practiced efficiency of a single parent who had learned to manage every detail of daily life while making it seem effortless and natural. As they prepared to leave, Emma turned to Victoria with the directness that only children possess. "Will we see you again? I like you. You're pretty and nice, and you listen to all my stories." Victoria felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. "I'd like that very much, Emma. if your daddy thinks it's okay. Marcus met her eyes across the table, and in that moment, something passed between them that had nothing to do with the circumstances that had brought them together and everything to do with the connection they had discovered over the course of the evening. "I'd like that too," he said quietly. As they walked toward the front of the restaurant, Victoria realized that the evening had been nothing like what she had expected, and everything she hadn't known she needed. The snow was still falling outside, heavier now, creating a white blanket over the city that made everything look clean and new and full of possibility. At the coat check, as Marcus helped Emma with her mittens and hat, Victoria made a decision that surprised even her. "Can I give you both a ride home? The snow is getting heavier, and I have a driver waiting." Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing the practical benefits against his obvious discomfort with accepting what might be seen as charity. But Emma's tired voice settled the matter. "Please, Daddy. The car is probably warm, and my feet are cold." The drive through the snow-covered city was quiet and comfortable. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, curled against her father's side in the back seat of Victoria's luxury sedan. Marcus spoke softly about their neighborhood, about the small apartment they shared, about his hopes for the future. Victoria found herself sharing things she hadn't talked about in years: her own childhood, her relationship with her sister, the loneliness that had crept into her life despite all her professional success. When they reached Marcus's building, a modest apartment complex in a working-class neighborhood, Victoria felt a strange reluctance to let the evening end. But Emma was sleeping soundly, and Marcus needed to get her home and tucked into bed before Christmas morning arrived. "Thank you," Marcus said as he gathered his sleeping daughter into his arms. "For everything. For being so kind to Emma, for not making this evening feel awkward or impossible, for giving us both a Christmas Eve. We'll never forget." Victoria watched them disappear into the building, Emma's pink hat the last splash of color, before they vanished into the warm yellow light of the lobby. As her driver pulled away from the curb, she realized that something fundamental had shifted inside her. Something that had nothing to do with business strategies or market analysis, and everything to do with the recognition that happiness might be simpler and more accessible than she had ever imagined. Back in her penthouse, surrounded by the trappings of her success, Victoria set Emma's snow globe on her desk and watched the artificial snow swirl around the tiny Christmas tree. For the first time in years, she felt the stirring of something that might have been hope. The possibility that her carefully constructed life might have room for something warmer, more real, more connected to the simple human joys she had witnessed that evening. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, the snow from the night before, creating a pristine landscape that transformed the city into something magical. Victoria woke early, not from the anxiety that usually drove her from bed, but from a sense of anticipation she couldn't quite name. She moved through her morning routine differently, taking time to actually taste her coffee, to look out at the snow-covered park visible from her windows, to notice the way the early light made everything seem possible. Her phone had accumulated dozens of messages overnight, the usual holiday greetings from business associates mixed with more personal notes from friends and family. But the message that caught her attention was from an unknown number, sent early that morning. "Emma wanted me to text you first thing Christmas morning. She said you might be alone, and nobody should be alone on Christmas. We're having a very simple breakfast. But you're welcome to join us if you'd like. No pressure, just an invitation from a little girl who can't stop talking about her new friend, Victoria." Victoria stared at the message for a long time, weighing the invitation against the comfortable isolation she had maintained for so many years. Her sister had invited her to family Christmas dinner, as she did every year, and Victoria had declined, as she always did. The idea of joining Marcus and Emma for what was sure to be a modest celebration in their small apartment should have felt awkward, inappropriate, a step too far into a world where she didn't belong. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. She typed back quickly before she could change her mind. "I'd love to join you. What can I bring?" The response came back almost immediately. "Just yourself. Emma is already setting an extra place at the table." Victoria spent the next hour choosing what to wear, settling finally on jeans and a simple sweater, clothes that felt more honest than her usual designer armor. She stopped at a bakery that was somehow open on Christmas morning, purchasing fresh pastries and a small cake decorated with holly and berries. As an afterthought, she added a bottle of orange juice and real maple syrup, remembering Emma's delight in trying new flavors. The apartment building looked different in daylight, modest but well-maintained, with Christmas decorations visible in many of the windows. Victoria climbed the stairs to the third floor, her heart beating faster with each step, carrying her small contributions to their morning celebration. Marcus opened the door before she could knock, as if he had been watching for her arrival. He wore jeans and a flannel shirt, and his smile carried the kind of genuine warmth that made her feel instantly welcome. "She's been awake since 5, he said, stepping aside to let her in. "I think she's more excited about seeing you than about opening her presents." The apartment was small, but filled with light from windows that faced east, capturing the morning sun. Christmas decorations were everywhere, obviously homemade or carefully collected over years, each one carrying the story of Christmases past. A small tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper angels and strings of popcorn, with a few carefully wrapped presents arranged beneath its branches. Emma appeared from what must have been her bedroom, still in pajamas but with her hair carefully brushed and held back with a red ribbon. "Victoria, you came!" "Daddy said you might be too busy. But I knew you'd come because nobody should be alone on Christmas, and we're not alone if we're together." The logic was perfect in its simplicity, and Victoria felt her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Emma took her hand and led her to the small dining area, where the table was set with mismatched plates and glasses, but everything was arranged with care and attention to detail. A small bouquet of grocery store flowers served as a centerpiece, and Emma had obviously been involved in setting the table, as evidenced by the slightly crooked placement of the silverware and the napkins folded into elaborate, if imperfect, shapes. "I helped make breakfast," Emma announced proudly. "We have pancakes and eggs and bacon, and Daddy let me crack the eggs all by myself. Only one piece of shell got in, and we fished it out." Marcus emerged from the kitchen, carrying a platter of golden pancakes, the smell of vanilla and cinnamon filling the small apartment. Emma insisted on making them special for Christmas morning. She added a secret ingredient. Emma giggled. "It's not secret anymore if you tell. It's love." I added love to the pancakes. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly, moved by the child's innocent wisdom and the obvious love that filled this modest home. She had eaten Christmas breakfast in 5-star restaurants, had hosted elaborate holiday brunches for dozens of guests, but she couldn't remember the last time food had been prepared with such genuine care and affection. As they sat down to eat, Emma insisted on saying grace, her small voice carrying the practiced cadence of a child who had been taught to be grateful for what she had. "Thank you for our food and our home and for Daddy and for Victoria coming to eat with us and for Christmas and for snow and for everything good. Amen." The pancakes were perfect, fluffy, and sweet with just the right amount of Emma's secret ingredient. The conversation flowed easily, Emma carrying much of it with her observations about Christmas morning, about the snow outside, about the presents waiting under the tree. Marcus listened with the patient attention of a father who never took his daughter's chatter for granted, and Victoria found herself relaxing into the domestic rhythm of their morning in a way that felt both foreign and completely natural. After breakfast, Emma could barely contain her excitement about the presents, but she insisted on cleaning up the dishes first, following what was obviously a family tradition about taking care of responsibilities before enjoying treats. Victoria helped with the cleanup, working alongside Marcus in the small kitchen, their movements finding an easy synchronization as they washed and dried and put away. "Thank you for coming," Marcus said quietly as they worked. "Emma was worried that you might spend Christmas alone, and honestly, so was I. After last night, after seeing how kind you were to her, the thought of you going back to an empty house on Christmas morning just felt wrong." Victoria dried a plate carefully, considering her words. "I've spent the last 5 Christmases alone. I told myself it was by choice, that I was too busy, that family obligations were just distractions from more important things. But the truth is, I think I forgot how to let people care about me, how to be part of something larger than my own ambitions." Marcus paused in his washing, looking at her with understanding. "It's scary, isn't it, letting people matter? When Emma's mother left, when I became a single father overnight, I thought the safest thing was to just focus on the 2 of us, to not let anyone else close enough to hurt us. But Emma teaches me every day that isolation isn't protection, it's just another kind of loss." From the living room came Emma's voice, carefully patient but edged with excitement. "Are you almost done in there? The presents are getting lonely." They finished the dishes and joined Emma by the tree, where she had arranged herself cross-legged on the floor, her hands folded in her lap in an obvious effort to be good and wait patiently. The presents were few, but wrapped with care, and Emma's excitement was infectious as she handed out gifts with the ceremonial importance of a child who understood that Christmas was about more than receiving. Marcus had given Emma a set of beginner's books about ballet, each one carefully chosen to match her current reading level and her passion for dance. Emma's gift to her father was a handmade card with a drawing of the two of them holding hands, surrounded by hearts and stars, with "World's Best Daddy" written in carefully formed letters. But it was Emma's final present that brought tears to Victoria's eyes. A small box wrapped in tissue paper and tied with a ribbon that had clearly been saved from something else. Inside was a bracelet made of colorful beads, obviously strung by Emma's own small hands, with a small charm in the shape of a heart dangling from the center. "I made it for you," Emma explained, suddenly shy, "because you're part of our family now, and everyone in our family gets a special bracelet. See?" She held up her own wrist, showing a similar bracelet with different colored beads. "Daddy has one too, but he doesn't wear it because he says it's too fancy for work. But he keeps it in his wallet." Victoria accepted the bracelet with hands that trembled slightly, overwhelmed by the gesture and by Emma's casual declaration that she was now part of their family. The beads were uneven, the string was a bit loose, and the charm was slightly crooked, but it was the most beautiful piece of jewelry she had ever received. "It's perfect, Emma. Absolutely perfect." As Emma helped her fasten the bracelet around her wrist, Victoria felt something click into place inside her chest. A puzzle piece she hadn't known was missing. The weight of the simple beaded bracelet felt heavier and more significant than all the expensive jewelry in her collection, because it represented something that money couldn't buy: belonging, acceptance, love freely given, without conditions or expectations. The morning stretched on in the comfortable rhythm of a family Christmas, with Emma showing Victoria her favorite toys, reading aloud from one of her new books, and insisting on playing a board game that involved more laughter than strategy. Marcus made hot chocolate with marshmallows, and they sat together on the couch, Emma curled between the two adults, watching the snow continue to fall outside the windows. At some point, Emma's excitement gave way to the comfortable tiredness that follows intense joy, and she dozed against Victoria's shoulder. Marcus covered her with a soft blanket, and for a few minutes the apartment was quiet except for the sound of snow against the windows and the steady rhythm of Emma's sleeping breath. "She's never taken to anyone so quickly," Marcus said softly, careful not to wake his daughter. "Usually, she's shy around new people, cautious. But with you, it was like she recognized something, like she knew you belonged here." Victoria looked down at Emma's sleeping face, at the trust and contentment visible even in sleep, and felt her heart expand in a way that was both wonderful and terrifying. "I don't know anything about being part of a family," she admitted quietly. "I've spent so many years building walls, focusing on achievements that could be measured and controlled. This feels like stepping into completely unknown territory." Marcus reached across Emma's sleeping form and gently touched Victoria's hand, his fingers tracing the beaded bracelet. "Maybe that's exactly what makes it right," he said. "Maybe we're all just learning as we go, trying to figure out how to love each other better, how to show up for the people who matter. Emma and I, we don't have much to offer except what you see here. A small apartment, simple meals, a lot of love, and the promise that if you let us, we'll never take you for granted." Victoria felt tears she had been holding back all morning finally spill over, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of recognition, of finally understanding that she had been searching for the wrong things in all the wrong places. Success and independence and control were fine, but they were empty without connection, without people who cared whether you came home at night, without the simple joy of sharing pancakes with love stirred in. As the afternoon faded into evening, Victoria realized that she didn't want to leave, didn't want to return to her penthouse and her isolation and her carefully controlled life. But she also understood that what was happening between them was too precious to rush, too important to treat casually. When Emma woke from her nap, she insisted on showing Victoria the photo album that chronicled her young life, pointing out pictures from birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments that Marcus had captured with the devotion of a father who understood that every day with his daughter was a gift. The photos told the story of a man raising a child alone, of modest celebrations and simple pleasures, of a love so strong and constant that it transformed every ordinary moment into something special. "This is when I lost my first tooth," Emma explained, pointing to a picture of herself grinning toothlessly at the camera. The tooth fairy brought me $2 because Daddy told her I was extra brave. And this is my first dance recital. See my costume? Daddy stayed up all night sewing on the sequins because some of them fell off. Victoria listened to Emma's narration, watched Marcus's face as his daughter shared their history, and understood that she was being invited into something sacred. This wasn't just a Christmas morning visit or a casual getting-to-know-you session. This was an initiation, a demonstration of what life could look like if she was brave enough to step away from her safe, isolated world and risk the vulnerability that real love required. As evening approached, and it became clear that Victoria needed to return to her own life, Emma became unusually quiet, clinging a bit more tightly, her usual chatter replaced by a thoughtful silence that spoke of a child's intuitive understanding that something important was shifting. "Will you come back?" Emma asked as Victoria prepared to leave. "Not just sometime, but soon? Because Christmas is just one day, but family is supposed to be every day." Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, looking into eyes that held all the hope and trust in the world. "Yes, sweetheart, I'll come back, as often as you and your daddy will have me." Emma threw her arms around Victoria's neck, holding on with the fierce intensity of a child who had learned not to take affection for granted. "I love you, Victoria. You're the best Christmas present I ever got." And as Victoria held this precious child who had somehow opened her heart in the space of 24 hours, she realized that Emma was right. They were both Christmas presents to each other, unexpected gifts that had arrived when they were most needed, wrapped in the kind of love that changes everything it touches. The snow had stopped falling by the time Victoria's driver arrived, leaving behind a world transformed and clean and full of new possibilities. As she settled into the back seat of her car, wearing Emma's handmade bracelet and carrying a container of leftover pancakes that Marcus had insisted she take, Victoria felt like a different person than the one who had sat alone in that restaurant just 24 hours earlier. The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove through the quiet Christmas evening, and Victoria found herself already planning her return, already imagining herself as part of the daily rhythms of Marcus and Emma's life. Her phone buzzed with messages, work emergencies that would have sent her into immediate action just a day before, but she let them wait. For the first time in her adult life, she had found something more important than her career, more valuable than her independence, more precious than her carefully maintained control. She had found a family, and they had found her, and together they would figure out how to build something beautiful and lasting and real. The transformation had begun with a blind date that almost didn't happen, continued through the kindness of a child who believed that nobody should be alone on Christmas, and culminated in the recognition that love comes in many forms, often arriving when we least expect it and most need it. Victoria smiled as she watched the city lights fade into the distance, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges and uncertainties, but also knowing that she would face them not as a solitary figure fighting the world alone, but as part of something larger and warmer and infinitely more meaningful than anything she had ever built in her corporate life.